Hello, and welcome to another edition of Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is where a member of the CIG lore team takes you through the sort of science, history, character, flavor, whatever you want to call it, for one of the many, many systems that will appear in the Star Citizen Squadron 42 universe. Again, I'd like to thank all of our subscribers for helping us provide that little extra money every month to do content like this. And let's get started. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Dave Haddock. I am the lead writer. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about Nyx. You've probably seen it mentioned a lot in some of the jump points and in some of the ATVs, behind the scenes stuff, and we'll get to why you might know it in a little bit. But to start off, we'll just start here in our wonderfully beautiful star map here. We're in the Sol system, so let's go find Nyx. All right. So, bye bye Earth. And Nyx, here we go. So we'll start out a bit wider just to kind of show you where it is situated. So here you have Nyx. Basically, it's kind of in a nice little confluence of jump points here. You have Odin and Bremen and Tohil and Kastra and Pyro. And but Nyx is an unclaimed system, so that means that basically for whatever reason the UEE or whatever governing body decided, in this case it was the UEE, decided that it wasn't worth basically incorporating into the Empire properly. Sometimes that means it's, you know, people call it outlaw systems, stuff like that, but you know, we try to stick with unclaimed just because there are various reasons, and we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so jumping in, you'll notice it's a very kind of simple system. 3 planets, 2 asteroid belts, and a star. Very exciting stuff. So the star is a F-type main sequence star. Basically, none of the planets here are inhabitable, to get that out of the way. That's part of the reason why the UEE decided not to basically incorporate it into the Empire. It was discovered in 2582 by Carla Larry, and basically the idea was that surveyors basically showed up there and took a look at the thing and the system itself and decided that it just basically wasn't worth the money that it would cost. But there were resources there, so they were worth the money to come in and take, but the system itself wasn't worth it. So a little backstory about the name itself. Nyx is named after the Greek goddess of darkness, night, and the idea being early on that there was this sort of that there was poor visibility in the system, that it was basically kind of difficult to navigate around, which made it kind of ideal for more nefarious types to hide in and around. The other reason actually is because I was a fan of Clive Barker's Lord of Illusions, and I like the name. So we'll go through the planets now, and Nyx 1 is basically, it's a coreless kind of rocky terrestrial planet. When they first took over the system, basically this was sort of earmarked for a lot of potential resources, and over the course of centuries they've basically just, you know, strip mined a lot of it. And while it means that there's basically no large scale resources that would justify a major company coming and taking it in, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily depleted, but just at a certain point it's just not worth it to set up a facility there, basically. So I'll give you a bit of context about the system when it was discovered historically. So it was 2582, as I mentioned earlier before. So this is 40 years after Ivar Messer has ascended to, has basically established the Imperator rank, named himself thus, and established the United Empire of Earth. So as far as the universe goes, this is still sort of, I guess what you call, I mean, the Messer era is reputedly known as like one of the worst, darkest eras of human history. But at this point it was still early on. So this is between the First and the Second Tevarin War. So right now it's sort of at its best, if you could call it that. People think that he's honestly protecting them. So the public have not been as downtrodden, but he's doing that thing where he's a very smart, savvy dude, so he's been basically kind of still coalescing his power and subverting, sort of reorganizing control to get himself more and more power. But again, because people think that he's doing a good job, they're kind of okay with any changes and stuff like that. And they're still obviously came off the very devastating Tavaran War. So Carlo Larry founds the system, pops it over to the UEE, and basically they come and take a look and decide it's not really worth spending the money, so they left it alone. Nix 1 was the one who obviously got mined a lot because there was a lot to take, and Nix 2 is basically, it's an uninhabitable kind of smog planet. I can't remember the actual designation of it. Yeah, smog planet, there we go. So the technology, the sort of idea we were running with is like, it was sort of like Venus, like very high pressure kind of sulfuric acid type thing, so very, very lethal, and the technology didn't quite exist to be able to terraform that. So, you know, we have a couple of those that scattered throughout the universe that basically seemed like they couldn't be terraformed, and then later on maybe technological advances pushed terraforming technology, so they were able to do it. So it's possible that maybe in the future they might something might be developed that would let them take a second look at Nix 2 and try to terraform it. But in the meantime, it's just basically uninhabitable and very, very lethal. And so we'll just go through the planets real quick. So Nix 3 is an ice giant, basically situated all the way over here. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much an ice planet. Nothing really, can't inhabit it, can't really do much with it as of yet. So the other, and probably the most important aspect of this system are these asteroid belts. You have two. There's this one between Nix 2 and Nix 3 called the Glacium Ring. And then you have the Keegar Belt, which is it's sort of like the border, kind of encircles the entire thing. So it's a much less dense, but the Glacium Ring is the one we want to kind of focus on, because this is much more dense and kind of is where our main point of interest is in this system. So again, obviously asteroid mining is a very, very big thing of what we're trying to do. So the idea was that there was basically this company called QV Planet Services that discovered a planetoid-sized asteroid located in here and decided, hey, you know, we're going to roll the dice. And apparently it was very, you know, the idea was that it was very difficult to get, because it was so dense, very difficult to get large ships in here. So it was a tricky thing, but they were undeterred and decided that they were going to try and do it anyway and set up this massive facility on a planetoid. And basically were in operation for a handful of years, but ultimately decided that it wasn't worth the cost to try and get stuff in and out of there and ships and stuff like that. So they basically abandoned it. So after that, basically the system was pretty much useless. Like there was nothing really, nothing going on here. So flash forward to much later, and we have basically a group of refugees who want to get out of the UEE. So the Messers have gone dark side, to use the parlance of our times, and we're in sort of like the Corson Messer, who's the fifth Messer era, and so this is like the very dark, sociopathic, like vicious despot type ruler. So there was this small group of people who basically said, "We're done. We can't, in any good conscience, live in this type of government environment, whatever you want to call it." And so they're like, "We're out. We're done." So they set off to try and find and establish their own kind of community. And so sure enough, they come across the Nix system, and they go to the old facility that was formerly run by QV Planet Services on this planetoid that they basically just walked away from. It was cheaper basically to just leave it. And so they basically showed up there and took it over, got it back up and running again so it was habitable, and decided that this was where they were going to build their own egalitarian community that represented everything that the Messer regime was taking away. So, you know, it's about community, it's about camaraderie, and, you know, people working together and overcoming problems and stuff like that. So that became the landing zone that is known as Levski. So basically, you have an independent government that is trying to be a truly egalitarian community, and that's what they've been doing. So they basically started collecting people, accepting refugees from coming in from the UAE who are also kind of sick and tired of living under the Mesher regime, and we're really trying to make a go of being a self-sustaining, independent government. Now, in time, obviously the Meshers fell. The people eventually rose up and overthrew them, but Levski still maintained. So they are still trying to kind of keep their government going. And while they probably aren't as ideologically opposed to the current UAE regime, I think they still view it as like big government, serving corporate interests, stuff like that. So they're still doing what they can to try and maintain this ideal that they've been pursuing. And but there's sort of a trick to it. So the catch with Levski, and we'll kind of jump behind the scenes for a second. I mean, one of the things, as we were saying earlier, like this was meant to be an unclaimed system, and originally in internal discussions within the company, there was these sort of there was UEE systems, and then they were called pirate systems or outlaw systems and stuff like that. And so it felt like there was only just to give flavor within the outlaw systems. The idea was that basically we wanted to switch it up a little bit. So not every outlaw system should be a hive of scum and villainy type thing. So Levski that's how Levski kind of came about as an original concept, was how can we do something that's not a UEE thing, that's a outlaw organization that's not necessarily criminal. So hence the idea of this sort of independent government came about. So, but the fun thing was, because it was still an unclaimed system, it still had to have serve that sort of criminal element thing. If you can come here and stuff like that. So how do we strike that balance? So the idea was basically, because they had this sort of open arms policy of, we'll take anybody, everyone is worthwhile and deserves to have a chance at peace and happiness and stuff like that. It's a really great idea and a really beautiful thing to pursue, but at the same time, there were people the more nefarious people in the universe who viewed that as basically as a vulnerability, as a weakness. So criminals started taking advantage of the fact that they had this place that they could go to that would just sort of unconditionally accept them and stuff like that. And so what you have is now Levski is in a sense threatened by a growing number of criminals who are just using their sort of good nature against them as a hideout, basically. So you get to see this very interesting dynamic, and it's kind of one of the things that I like most about this system or this location, is that there's this sort of sad tragedy to it, because you can see them trying to hold on to this ideal of community and stuff like that. But when you have people within that community who aren't on the same page and don't share your ideology, you get a nice conflict going on. So I think that's what gives this place a very unique flavor to it, because you have this sort of criminal element that's just underneath the current of these people who are really trying to do good, and them sort of at battle, and what does it take for the good people to start to shift their ideals to block out the people that they think are causing problems for the location. So yeah, that's basically Levski in a nutshell. Lots of idealistic, egalitarian people who are basically just trying to do their best in the universe, and you have a group of people who are trying to, basically self-serving, do crime, whatever they do, and the sort of juxtaposition between the two. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this episode of Lore Makers. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, all of this information, or a lot of this information, you can find on our star map. If you go to the robertspaceindustries.com website, you can see for yourself and go for a wander around our universe. Thanks, and see you next time.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.